Welcome back to Powered by Play. I'm Drew, and I'm a professor of theater at Chapman University in Southern California.
I'm Avery, and I'm a theatrical scenic designer. Every month on this podcast, we explore what we play, how we play, and why we play.
We believe play powers us, and that's what makes it powerful.
All right, Drew.
All right, Avery.
Press play.
Welcome back to Powered by Play. This time, we're exploring fitness and sports. We're asking questions like, what do we do to move our bodies and keep ourselves healthy and strong? What do sports have to do with the pleasure of play? How is fitness a lifelong pursuit? And what happens when fitness and sports are simulated? I'm looking forward to this, Avery. I think this is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah. So I guess we should start by defining some terms. What do we mean by fitness? Who decides what fitness is? So the word used to mean suitable or proper, as in that was fit for using for a meal or something like that. But now it's usually understood as healthy and vigorous, according to my very deep Google etymology search. And sport comes from the French word desporter, which used to mean all entertainment or recreational activities, including reading, for example. And then later it was focused on hunting and team sports. So we're talking like 1700s, 1800s. Suddenly it took on a more specific meaning. So it's interesting to me that going to the gym, for example, we call that a workout, not a play out, right? You are working your muscles, not playing your muscles, which is a little bit interesting. It's always interesting to me which words we apply to which activities. But if you are playing baseball, you are playing baseball, not working baseball. So, pretty fascinating. I guess some questions that we can ask are things like, what counts as a sport? How much physical activity needs to be present? For example, is chess a sport? Is Magic the Gathering and other trading card games, are they sports? There used to be Magic the Gathering tournaments on some channels of ESPN, which is, of course, the sport network. What about hunting and fishing? Are they sports? I mean, hunters are still often called sportsmen. So I don't know. I guess there's a lot of nuance here. I think we have a general idea of what you and I would refer to as sports and fitness. What do you think, Avery? What do you think of all this?
Yeah, I think fitness is a very important part of our lives, first of all, and it should be all about connecting your physical activity to your internal wellness and what's going on the inside. So, according to medical news today, experts define physical fitness as one's ability to execute daily activities with optimal performance, endurance, and strength with the management of disease, fatigue, and stress and reduced sedentary behavior. So it's kind of about not just lifting weights that are the heaviest and running the fastest, but it's about how that relates to your health and what is going on inside of your body. And the way that that is tied into sports is that sports is the competitive and organized embodiment of this physical activity into a world of play and pleasure and fun and joy. And it's all about what people coming together can enjoy together and accomplish together. The Global Association of International Sports Federations, which I just learned existed, they use the following criteria determining that a sport should have an element of competition. Easy. It should be in no way harmful to any living creature. Also, pretty easy to do. And it shouldn't rely on equipment provided by a single supplier, and it shouldn't rely on any luck element specifically designed into the sport. They also recognize that there's different categories of sports. So there's physical, like rugby or other athletics. There's mind sports, like chess, like you said, or Go. There are predominantly motorized ones, like Formula One or powerboating. There's ones that are based on coordination and dexterity, like snooker and other cue sports. And there's also animal supported ones, like equestrian sports. And it also reminds me of like betting on sports and how that's not always a legal thing, but is very prominent as well. Even though the betting on the sport is not a sport in it. Actually, maybe betting on sports is itself is sport too. Yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I wonder if I wonder if betting on a sport relies on luck more than the sport relies on luck. Really
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly.
Well, maybe we should go back to our childhoods and explore this. What were our first connections with sports or with physical fitness? Okay, so as our listeners know, I was a kid in the 1980s, and so it was an interesting time to be a kid, kind of expected to play sports, expected to engage in some physical fitness. This was a time before video games, a time before VR. And so sports were mostly outside and bodily. I was put in soccer for 2 years. And although it was kind of interesting to be part of a team, I didn't love it. I didn't super love soccer. I didn't super love the idea that a ball would be flying at me and I would have to do something with it. I liked just kind of standing in one place and shooting goals. That was cool. But there was a little bit of kind of a fear element. Tennis, later I got involved in tennis and I again liked kind of what I could do in terms of making the racket make contact with the tennis ball and swinging the racket in different ways and just kind of the back and forth. And it was it was kind of cool because obviously soccer is a team sport, tennis is an individual sport unless you're playing doubles, and it was kind of fascinating to be fully responsible for my own performance in tennis versus being part of a team and quote unquote letting the team down or something like that when I was playing soccer. I loved swimming. I took my sister to the community pool in the neighborhood where we lived and I swam and she swam, and I would let her splash around in kind of the shallow end of the pool, and then I would go back and forth from the shallow end to the deep end. And I never liked competitive swimming or getting my strokes exactly right, but I loved moving my body in the pool. And I loved sort of telling stories about diving for treasure or being on another planet and exploring the ocean on another planet. That was my more speed than getting the backstroke exactly right or something like that. So tennis and soccer and other sports that I tried never really took. Full disclosure here, I am not particularly coordinated. And so that was always a challenge. Um, I can learn dance choreography if I practice it like 1,000 times, but my body is not. I mean, I can sort of discipline myself to do like yoga poses and things like that. We'll talk about yoga later on a little bit. But in terms of like getting my foot to do what I want it to do when a ball comes flying at it and it's not like it's not something I'm very good at. Also, I had as a kid exercise induced asthma. So for me, being sporty was not really in the cards. I enjoyed, however, learning the rules to sports and understanding, oh, this is what baseball is like, and this is what you do, and that kind of thing. The rules were pretty cool. And learning how the rules for example, something like football were different from basketball, were different from baseball, were different from soccer, and how that meant that a team was doing something in a different way. Also, when I was a kid, there was something called the Presidential Physical Fitness Test. I think this continued into the 90s as well. So, this is a period where we have Ronald Reagan and the first George Bush as president, and we have Arnold Schwarzenegger on the President's Physical Fitness Council. And so, Arnold Schwarzenegger was very invested in these two presidents getting kids in shape. And so our PE classes were required to test us. There were a lot of different requirements, a lot of things that we had to do, push ups, sit ups. And I remember, I think we had to run like either an 8 minute or a 10-minute mile. I can't remember which one it was, and then do some pull ups. And there were certain things that I could do and certain things that I could not. They allowed you to bypass certain requirements in order, and you would still kind of like pass the physical fitness test. This was also the era of Jazzercise and Jane Fonda's workout, and oh my goodness, these were really interesting. So my mom would go to Jazzercise, my mom would put on Jane Fonda's workout on a VHS tape and put it in the VCR, and like, work out in front of the TV to Jane Fonda saying, "Are you feeling the burn? Are you feeling the burn?" And so like girls in school would dress up in headbands and would dress up in leg warmers. Even though they weren't exercising, they were going to school, but it became part of kind of the fashion of that time. So those are the things that I remember from being a kid.
Oh, you really brought my memories back to those fitness tests that we had to do all throughout school. I also had to do those too. I think I lucked out with barely being able to do most of the things. Yeah, so, woof. I also had to do summer swim camp according to my parents, and that involved driving to a different neighborhood that had its own pool, and that pool hosted kids of all ages to learn how to swim. And I remember as I grew older as a kid, I would have to do more and more laps. When I got to level 4, I think that was when we had to do laps in the 4 or 5 foot high pool area. And that's when I did not have as much endurance. And I think I stopped after around that level. I did enjoy kicking around like you did too, and just like playing around in the pool, but having to do laps was definitely really intense. My gosh. We also did kung fu growing up. I have visceral memories of learning how to yell while you punch, which is a very important thing in martial arts, in that a lot of kids would just like not really punch, they would just like put their hand in the air and then like kind of yell. But our teacher was very adamant about yelling as hard as we could, punching the air as hard as we could, showing that force, the discipline. There's also something called a horse stance, which is where it's kind of like a wide squat, and we would have to hold that position for a while to gain more endurance and whatnot. And then there was also the collecting of your different belt colors, where we would start from a white belt and then go to yellow. And then I think it was blue, green, purple, red, etc. The level of gamification of that was kind of fun too, where every year or so we would test for the next belt level, and we would have to perform certain forms. Like, it's a martial art, so we had to do some basically choreography of certain punches and blocks and stuff. And so if we performed them well enough, we would get rewarded with our next belt color. And I also really loved sparring too, which is where you're basically fighting but not really touching and not really making contact. I loved sparring because it was as close to the real thing as could possibly happen. And also because you're not touching each other, so you're invincible too. So it's like you're having fun like fighting, but you're also invincible. It was a great time, and the stuff that I learned in martial arts does stick with me now to this day, even though I haven't really practiced it in years. I can still jump and do a roll on the ground if I have to. So yeah, there's that. In grade school, we had to do a lot of relay races. I remember, I think they like build character and teamwork or whatever. And it's all about cheering on your own teammates as they race in front of you. So that was the big part for my primary school. It was like you have to cheer on your teammates. That's the most important part of the relay race. And then at the end, when the other team wins, you have to tell them good job and you have to be a good sport. And that was like another really big part of sports at that school. That school also had a big rainbow wall at the end of the field, and we would run back and forth to different colors. Like today, we had to run all the way to the red wall. Oh no, it's the furthest one, and we hated that. We would also play dodgeball, capture the flag, soccer, basketball. We would play hockey on the basketball court. And then there would be recess games and like passing down all of the knowledge of which games are cool, like Foursquare, Red Square, Spice, stuff like that. And even on special occasions at that school, we would do like beanbag racing for when we were learning about the prairies and stuff. And we had a day where we would all pick a planet and orbit around each other and run around the field as the solar system. And then, of course, I don't know if you've ever had this, but sometimes they would bring in a parachute and we would just play with the parachute and just wave it
Oh
up and
yeah, I
down.
remember the parachute.
Yeah, it was awesome.
With the parachute, you had to trade places with someone on the other side, right? You would like
Yeah,
run under the parachute. That's the game I remember.
yeah, running under it, sitting on it after you lift it up, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, they were cool.
Yeah. And then in high school, I also did dance classes. I did track and field. I did cross country. In college, I tried to do some skateboarding, but I chickened out around the time where I was trying to learn how to jump on a skateboard because I was afraid of getting injured, which is a real thing, and the healthcare is not that much of a real thing. So I wanted to be safe and not do something too dangerous. But yeah, I'm sure I'll talk a little bit more about some of these activities in our next topics where we talk about fitness as a game or a competition.
Yeah, you mentioned gamification.
Yes.
And I love that. So, how did we turn these tasks into a game? How did we turn fitness into a game? And so here I'm thinking of things like how many steps are you doing? How much weight can you put on the weight machine when you are working out? I found this great quote from Henry David Thoreau. I love this quote. And he said, "Many men go fishing all their lives without realizing it is not fish they are after." And I love this because to me it brings up, what are we chasing? What drives us forward? Why do we compete? Why do we turn something in some ways that is an individual pursuit into a pursuit where we are comparing ourselves to others, right? So, from being in classes or playing sports, we have this sort of drive to compete in terms of sports and fitness kind of drilled into us as kids. And then we become adults, and it just seems natural to keep that going. Oh, well, I remember when I played dodgeball and I was trying to stay in the longest, right? And so that's sort of what I want to do when I am in this adult activity. I'm trying to like hang in there the longest or something like that. And there are watches and other devices that track steps. There's MyFitnessPal, tracks how active we have been, also tracks what we are eating. Oh, that's a good one, Avery.
Mm.
That is a good one. We had our episode on food and drink, and so here we have a little bit of crossover, right? How do we sort of compete either with ourselves or with others in terms of what are you eating today? What are you drinking today? How many times have you heard somebody say, oh, well, if I have this food, I'm not going to be able to have breakfast tomorrow or whatever, right? Or I didn't eat all day so that I could go to this buffet. That kind of thing, like competition with self, competition with others, and trying to hit targets. I think you're going to talk about trying to beat personal records, right? Trying to establish personal bests. At the gym, I will admit that it is enjoyable to add new weight. When you're strong enough to be able to increase the weight, it feels like you have accomplished something. And even if you don't necessarily see your muscles getting bigger, you know you're getting stronger because, oh, I was able to press that 80 pounds with my feet 2 months ago. Now I'm able to press like 90 pounds with my feet. I'm just making up numbers. Listeners, this is not actually, I can't remember exactly what weight I do on different machines. But that's the thing. It's like you know that you are progressing. And then of course, we have all seen people showing off at the gym. There's some performative weightlifting. Oh man, how many times have you heard somebody go "ah, ah," and that kind of thing? Have some, I don't know. You were talking about yelling and punching at the same time for martial arts, so there's a little bit of yelling and weightlifting at the same time from some people, and of course, everybody in the gym looks over to see who is grunting and what they're doing. And then even in something like yoga, which is supposed to be non competitive, right? You're not supposed to feel like, oh, I'm watching myself in relation to what someone else can do. There's even competition in yoga when you are practicing yoga. For example, can I balance longer than someone else can balance? And if I'm in a stance where it requires hip flexibility to move your legs away from each other, how far can I kind of like open my legs versus how far can someone else open their legs? I mean, there are all kinds of things. Can you even manage to hit a pose like hero's pose, for example, right? Or something that's a little more advanced, a little more difficult. So I think that we do see some competition slipping in here. What do you think, Avery? What's your experience been?
Your retelling of the Gym Chronicles reminds me of this online trend where some guy approaches a girl and asks at the gym and asks, "How much do you weigh?" And then he's like, "Oh, well, if I can bench that much, can I get your number?" or something like that.
Oh, come on, man.
Yeah, talk about performative.
Yeah.
But you also reminded me of a quote from the show BoJack Horseman, where the main character tries to go on a run one day, and he barely makes it up a hill, and then he's collapsed on the ground, and then this other guy, another runner, comes up and is like, "Hey, it gets easier. Every day it gets a little easier, but you gotta do it every day. That's the hard part." And that is just the story of personal records, and not even as literal as personal records can be, but also the mental part of it, that every day doing something more and more will help you do it more and more, basically. And I learned this a lot during my time in track and field in middle school and high school. And track and field has a ton of different events. There's sprints, there's middle and long distance events, There's hurdling, there's jumping the highest or jumping the longest, there's throwing things the furthest, and all the time the coaches are always trying to help us beat our personal records. And I like that because they're not trying to help us beat some imaginary record. No, it's all about the personal record and what you can do and how you can improve from what you did yesterday. So I did sprints and relay races in middle school, and then I did long distance in freshman year of high school. And the difference between training for like going the fastest versus going the fastest and longest is it was interesting because with sprints, you still have to train long distance basically. You still have to train your endurance. Like just because you only do the sprints events doesn't mean that you're only practicing sprinting all the time. You also have to round out your palette of fitness with longer distance running, with squats, with some weights, with all this variety of exercise that will help you with this one thing. And then same thing for our long distance runs, like our cross country races, we would do different locations around the county. So it was not just running the same hills up and down. We had the privilege of variety for when we did those cross country races, and we were able to measure our 5 kilometer personal record with different areas. Like some areas had more hills, some areas were relaxing. I also had the privilege of running near the beach during high school too. Definitely a huge privilege. We got to run on the sand sometimes, and especially for our more relaxing days. And then this also reminds me of fitness as performance, which is another perhaps category to add to game slash competition, where yes, there are dance competitions, and fortunately I never had to do dance competitions growing up, but I did do some dance recitals, and we did do some like piano recitals, even though piano is not a sport, arguably. But who's to say it could be? But with with dance recitals specifically, there's the aspect of the fitness part of it, like, oh, look at this group. One person did a pirouette and another did turns 5 times, and then oh, those leaps and bounds are so gorgeous. Like it's not just about the physical part of it, it's also about the artistic part and the prettiness of it and how satisfying it is to look at. And I guess same thing with like synchronized swimming, other synchronized sports where you're a group together and you're trying to be both physically amazing and artistically amazing at the same time. Like ice skating or figure skating sports too. And I saw a internet video the other day of this figure skater. You know those inflatable costumes where you're the person on top and then below there's like a dinosaur or a chicken,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you
Yeah, yeah,
control
yeah.
so this person did a whole ice skating routine as a person in an inflatable chicken rider costume, and it was
Wow,
very
that's cool.
hilarious. Yeah, so like fitness as performance is able to bring in drama and comedy into the sport as well, which is another fascinating part of how we like to compete. But also, it's not just about the competition, it's about the spectators' enjoyment, the stories that we tell, and what comes out of it at the end.
Yeah, when you were mentioning adding comedy in, I was thinking about all the marathons or 5Ks or what have you where people cosplay
Mm.
or people do something silly, right? And well, you can't be a serious marathon runner if you are, I don't know, have like a cape you were running in or it's really interesting, right? So there are some fun runs. I think the distinction is a fun run versus a serious run. And yeah, yeah, I had forgotten about that until you mentioned it. And in terms of dance, so my daughter is a dancer, so she is very much in competition. And I once saw when I went to one of her recitals, I once saw a kid in a t-shirt that said athlete plus artist equals dancer. And I thought that was pretty cool. So that goes to exactly what you were saying. That it's not just about synchronized swimming as well. Yeah, you mentioned it's not just about strength and endurance and being able to muscularly, I'm going to make up a word, muscularly, physically, whatever, do the leap or do the turn or do the lift or whatever. It's about the grace and elegance, or if it's something like street dancing, hip hop dancing, the power, the energy, the attitude that you kind of have when you are doing the dance move. Yeah, really fascinating. The intersection of art and athleticism. So, okay, right now, what am I doing in terms of exercise and fitness? So I am not participating in any sports right now. I love walking, and I occasionally, especially when I'm traveling, I'll challenge myself to walk a great distance to see as much of the area as I can. But I walk to work every day. I walk to work. I walk home. I try to walk places that are um not easy to walk to, but like are reachable without a car. I try to make those opportunities to get a little exercise. And I kind of fell off the yoga train a little bit, but I for a long time I was doing yoga, and I actually need to reintegrate that into my life. So yoga was kind of especially when I was working on my dissertation back in the day, I was doing yoga quite a bit. And it actually, I think, helped me kind of be where I needed to be in order to get that project done, get that writing done. And I am going to the gym. I do have a personal trainer right now. So, hello to my personal trainer, Logan. And Logan keeps me accountable. Logan makes sure that I actually go to the gym because I am paying her to meet me at the gym at a certain time and show me how to do these different either floor exercises or like how to use the different weight machines in order to make sure that I am hitting all the different muscle groups, and I'm trying to get stronger, and I'm trying to feel like, oh, I have a little bit of endurance, or I have the strength that I need to do things like, I don't know, move boxes or do things that are just kind of part of life that you need to be able to like climb ladders or whatever, right? So tasks, let's just call it that, tasks that require some sort of physical strength. I would like to do more swimming. I need to find a pool, Avery. I need to like either join the Y or something so that I can get back in the pool. And I don't want to lap swim. We talked about lap swimming. I just want to kind of, I don't know about, like, I don't know, just have fun. Just either swim underwater and go back and forth, or get some exercise by being in the water. I think I must be, like, in the world of Avatar, I think I must be a water bender because I love water so very, very much. And so I got to get back in the pool. And then I also enjoy hiking. It depends on where I'm hiking. You mentioned like the pretty hills and the beach, and that's a lot better than, so here in Southern California, we have some really kind of like dusty roads, and I don't love hiking in the summer during the day without a lot of shade, and it's just kind of dusty and hot and sticky, and I like I yes, I like to curate my hiking experiences, Avery. I think that's what I'm trying to say. I like to make sure that I am in a space where not only am I getting exercise, but I am enjoying the experience. So that's what I'm up to right now. How about you?
This year, I have done some boxing fitness classes. I have gone to a place that is primarily for women or non-men, and I really enjoyed the experience. You would just pop into whenever they had one of their class session slots, and then you would punch a bag, do a bunch of fitness workouts, punch the bag. And I really liked it because it was a really wonderful way to get out your energy. And it even felt really cathartic at the end to just slam the bag as much as you could and really, really get your anger out or any pent up stress. It was really lovely. But I ended up switching back to a bouldering gym membership this year for a little bit because I wanted to spend more time with my partner because their sport of choice is bouldering and I wanted to spend more time with them honestly. And unfortunately I didn't so I have been bouldering on and off for 5 years. And I love it very much because I just naturally have an affinity toward it. I'm kind of like a squirrel. I enjoy just like using my balance and dexterity to do this kind of low impact activity where I don't have to sweat super hard. And bouldering gyms are usually air conditioned, and there's a variety of routes for you to try. But I was a little bit spoiled because the gym that I went to in Southern California was a lot larger and had a lot more variety than the one currently in the town where I live in. And so I unfortunately I ended my bouldering membership with them like twice in the last like year or two. I stopped and I started and stopped and started just because I just ended up getting kind of bored of the the amount of stuff that I could do. They had a lot of challenging climbs and a lot of ones that were my level, but the thing about bouldering is that it's the type of rock climbing where the ceiling is only so high and you can only climb so many routes before you do all the ones in the gym.
Yeah,
My
you're not
preferred
on
method,
ropes or in
yeah.
a harness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I do love top roping, which is where you do have like ropes and harnesses because in my opinion, you can automatically get a good workout in just by going up one route. For bouldering, I guess I'm more efficient that way. But my partner loves bouldering, but I think with bouldering, you can climb up one route, sure, but then you have to climb a lot of routes to get an equivalent workout. Or I guess I prefer a stamina workout rather than a brain workout because for those of you that don't know, with bouldering, a route is called a problem, and it's called that because you have to solve it by trying it multiple times sometimes and sitting back and looking at it and thinking about it and planning. And you do have to do an amount of planning with top roping, but I like that you can just squirrel up a giant wall with top roping and then get like a good sweat in. But I digress on that rant. I'm sure a lot of people prefer one or the other, but that's just me. And oh, within the last year, I've also done some pole dancing, which was my first time doing that, and it's very fun. It actually translates really well from bouldering because you have to use your grip strength and you have to use your grip strength to cling onto a metal pole. And it hurts a little bit at first, but you get used to it. And it is a lot of all of your muscles are getting worked out when you're pole dancing. And it's very fun. And it's also artistic. And you can express some sensuality there and some grace and elegance. And that was also fun while I did that too.
Yeah, there you go. There's something that was sexualized for a long time, and it was kind of seen, oh, there are only certain people who pole dance kind of thing, right? And then in the past, I don't know, maybe 20 years, it has become democratized and it has become a way of, yes, absolutely feeling like you are getting stronger, not that you are showing your body. And so yeah, it's been interesting to see the evolution of pole dancing. Also, the evolution of belly dancing. So, belly dancing originally folk dancing, in the Middle East, and then in the Victorian era becomes sexualized and exoticized and kind of, you have the Europeans seeing what's going on with these spaces in the colonies, and they're like, oh, well, this is what we mean by watching someone belly dance. And now it has, I guess, in the last, I don't know, 30 years or something like that, it also has become a way of exercising, particularly exercising your abs, like a part of the body that is sometimes left out by other types of exercise. Belly dancing, like that, is the focus. It is called belly dancing for a reason. And so it's been interesting to see that incorporated into fitness in the same way. Speaking of things that have kind of changed over the past couple decades, esports. Okay, I'm largely going to hand this over to you, Avery, because you have more experience with esports than I do and much more knowledge. It's fascinating to see how they are set up. It's fascinating to see people kind of in their individual stations and then looking at like a big board that is tracking their progress. But what do you think? What is compelling about esports? Why do people compete? Are they? Would you argue that they are sports?
I unfortunately have not attended a esports competition before, but I have some friends who are involved in it, and I watched a little documentary recently that was about, some young people who have ascended into a professional esports team. So esports is basically video gaming competitions for professional video gamers, and this can be in the form of individuals or with teams. And just like any other sport, it requires hours of practice, it requires very solid teamwork and a lot of dedication to the craft. And you can get scholarships in esports nowadays, and some schools and colleges even have like an esports lounge or room dedicated to this kind of gaming. I know that UCI has one in Irvine. And these games that are usually featured are they can be games like League of Legends, which is a game. It's a MOBA game. I don't remember what it stands for. MOBA stands for. I'm just googling it real quick. Multiplayer online battle arena game where you have two teams of players competing against each other, and they each have different characters with different abilities. So that's League of Legends. There's Overwatch, which is a first person shooter where which means that you're holding a gun and you're, shooting other characters. And then there's Fortnite, which you're also on this map that goes smaller and smaller, and you're able to build your way out of danger or attack others out of need to survive. It's a battle royale style game. So there is a lot of spectators for these. Esports have filled out entire arenas, and people can be very passionate about attending or keeping up with these events. And it is definitely a testament to where we've grown in the current century as to how these can be considered sports, even though you are just sitting at a computer with a mouse and keyboard and a headset. I think it might fall under the category of mind games,
Mm,
similar to chess, where you're not necessarily moving your body that much, but you are strategizing, you are practicing. It's kind of more about this is the discipline side of sports, I suppose, where the discipline is the dedication, the practice, the trial and error, and then getting your own personal records and stuff, and getting those really difficult headshots in Overwatch or whatever.
oh, and then a related topic would be simulations of sports in board games and in video games and other kinds of digital experiences. In childhood, a lot of kids had these little plastic Mattel handheld games. The primary one was Mattel Football, and I remember the screen was kind of surrounded by a plastic arena. And so you were moving in those days, you moved little red LED lines around, around the football field, and you were trying to score touchdowns, and you were trying to like pass the ball to someone else, and then their little red line would light up, and you had to get it past the other red lines. This was, oh my gosh, Avery, we spent hours and hours on these. Football was the primary one, but there was also baseball, there was also basketball. I never got the hang of this, but it was pretty interesting to try it. So this was like very, very foundational for the stuff that would come next. The very first Atari video game was Pong. It was a digital version of ping pong. And so you were like hitting, had little paddles, and you were hitting the ping pong ball across the digital table to someone else. And again, it was like lines and dots or lines and squares. We didn't even have smooth rounded dots, right? It was the ping pong ball was a square that would go between the two lines. So those have birthed, I mean, countless digital simulations of sports. Like Madden football is probably the big one that people think of. And so lots and lots of video games that put you into the sport. And during the pandemic, a lot of folks started kind of doing workouts indoors because that's all we had. So the VR revolution hit around that time. That was when I first got an Oculus, now known as a Meta Quest. So but it was an Oculus back then. Played Beat Saber to work out. Racket NX was one that I played to kind of work out. And this is, you are simulating someone. I don't even know what this competition field is. It's sort of like, if my listeners remember the original movie Tron, where the characters in Tron were standing on two sort of separate platforms and throwing things at each other. That's kind of like Racket NX, but you're hitting something towards, I guess you're in a dome and you're hitting glowy things that will give you points. Dance Dance Revolution, of course, in the arcade, one of the biggest sort of initial. We're gonna get you actually moving, and you're gonna move around, and the camera is going to track you. In the gym, the cycles that you get on to do aerobic workouts, at least the cycles that are there for me, they have videos of world locations. And so you virtually cycle through these really interesting either city streets or around a lake or in a national park or something like that. And so it's really interesting because here the activity, it's like only part simulated. So yes, you are cycling, and roughly the camera does what you are doing with the bike. You are in a different context. You're in a different virtual space, digital space. So it's kind of an interesting mishmash. And then board games. So yes, there are board games that simulate sporting events. Whether they are you managing a sports team with something like Blood Bowl Manager or baseball highlights, you are choosing a team and putting that team into a sporting event with another team, or whether it is actually simulating you doing a sport. So, Rouge is a board game about you being in a bike race. A2 is a board game about you climbing a mountain. And it's just really interesting to see, okay, how do we simulate these experiences in either a digital format or a cardboard format? What did you find, Avery?
I remember a lot of Wii Sports. A lot of people also probably do. I didn't personally have one growing up, so I was extra excited about them because I would have to go to friends' houses to play with their Wii. I specifically loved the tennis ones because I think that felt the most exciting on there to me because you could kind of see in real time how hard you swing the Wii control remote and thus how well you do. I think there was also bowling, which was interesting because I know that nowadays I've played bowling on the Nintendo Switch Sports version where you can just like align where you are and then swing it straight. So it's kind of like, what's the point of it? Because I don't know how to explain it better, but you kind of like control where your aim is via the controller, and then all you do is swing. So it's like how that it's much easier than it is in real life, I guess is what I'm trying to say, bowling on the Wii or Nintendo. But my family growing up had an Xbox Connect with our Xbox 360, and it's basically just a camera that tracks your movements during gameplay. So there was Dance Central 3 that I played. There was Connect Sports, so they had the sports for that. But there's no, with the Xbox Connect, you're not holding a controller or anything, so you just kind of mime everything, which is interesting. And with Connect Adventures, that's like the main game where you have I don't know, you're just going through like the jungle, you're traveling through this world, you have to jump your raft over waterfalls and stuff and get points that way. That's all that I remember from that. And the Nintendo Switch has a similar thing called Ring Fit Adventure that I have, where you basically have a Pilates ring. It's like a big steering wheel size ring, and you connect the Nintendo Switch controllers to the ring, and then you basically can squeeze or pull or lift or swing the ring around to get your exercise reps in. So I think that's also another interesting way to gamify fitness because in this game you also defeat other monsters that are fitness themed, and it's cute because your avatar is a human but the monsters are like really really buff because they represent your enemies. And then there is Just Dance, which is a classic on the Switch, and you basically follow along these glowing dancing avatars as you mirror their movements to create a dance routine with you and your friends. And my friends and I played that for my partner's birthday, and they loved it a lot. And there's always that one person who has the remote in their hand and doesn't do any of the movements other than the remote hand because there's no way for the machine to track how thoroughly into it you are other than the remote. So you can always just kind of trick the game into thinking that you're doing everything right. But
Oh, that's funny.
yeah. And just because I like video games a lot, my partner assumes that I would be good at Dance Dance Revolution. And I remember growing up, I'm very average at that game, but I have seen people go really hard on DDR at the arcade, and that is definitely a sport if I've ever seen one.
Oh, heck yeah. And it's really fun to see people who are excellent at DDR and then the crowds that gather around to watch them on the pad.
Yeah.
It almost becomes like a dance recital, you know?
Yeah.
Speaking of crowds gathering, okay, there are some times that fitness and sports are about the social aspect. They're about getting to chat with people in a different way. And so, what kind of space is allowed by the particular sport or activity that you're engaging in? So, I put down a few examples hiking, Conversations that you have when hiking are different because you're responding to what's going on in nature around you. And, oh, do you see that bird? Or do you see the fire damage there? Or that kind of thing. And you can also get into, so what's your life like right now? But it's interesting that the world becomes your conversation. The world guides your conversation. And it's pretty fascinating because nowhere else would you have the opportunity to say, well, let's talk about growing things or let's talk about the natural world other than when you are actually in the natural world and can point to things. Golf and miniature golf, you're going to talk about miniature golf. And so, yeah, this is a really interesting opportunity. I'll let you take that. And fishing and hunting. I mean, how many times have we seen people who, like Thoreau's quote, it's not really about the fish. It's not really about catching fish. It's about being out on the water or being next to the water and just kind of being at one, I guess, with the water that's around you and the people who are with you. I remember when I used to go fishing on my grandfather's boat, definitely to me as a child, the more important thing than catching a fish was actually what it felt like to chat with my dad and my sister and my grandpa. And there were times when it was like my grandfather had a voice like this. He would say, "Don't talk. You're going to scare the fish." And so it was kind of like you can socialize while the boat is moving, but if you are in one place waiting for fish to bite, then you had to be quiet. And then hunting, I think, kind of similar. I was taken on hunting trips when I was a little kid, and it was also very much you are quiet, you watch for things, you wait for things. But when you are going to where you are going to kind of station yourself, you wait for an animal to appear. Like when you're on your walk through the brush or whatever it is, and you can have a little conversation. And those conversations are interesting because again they're about like what animals do you think we're going to see. Do you think that the dog is going to be able to point to a pheasant? Is our dog going to be able to do what a hunting dog is going to do? Or what types of guns did you bring? It's a very, very interesting culture and conversation, and I have to admit, not one that I kept up with after childhood, but there is definitely a little corner of my mind that remembers this is what it was like to be with a group of hunters, and this is what it was like to kind of think about the closing the gap between you and the animals that you actually are going to eat. So I know you have some great examples. Socializing.
Yes. Growing up with two other siblings, my parents definitely found all the options in town for us to get our fitness and socializing in. So I loved going to roller skating rinks growing up. They always had whenever you walked in, it would always smell like popcorn and nachos. This very specific nostalgic smell, and they would always have the arcade machines at one end, and you'd see all the families of all ages coming in to skate. There would always be the kids who are still learning, so they have to cling to the walls and are a hazard because they're stumbling around a lot. And then there's the referees in the middle, making sure people are going in the right direction. And you can also rent these little strollers that help you learn how to skate as a kid. All those different experiences help make the roller rink a very fun, family-friendly place to be. And a lot of times they would also have certain sections of the skating session where they would turn out the lights and then they would have these glowy lights come on. And that was also always really special for me. I wish they did that at ice skating rinks, honestly, where they would turn off the lights and have special lights there. I don't know. I think it would be fun.
Blades on your feet. Let's turn off the lights.
I'm just saying. Okay,
Oh
maybe
no, I
maybe they can
totally
have
get it.
maybe they can have some lights on, but
There you go.
I think we should encourage ice skating rinks to have more retro lighting with more colorful. I don't know. It probably has something to do with the ice, I bet. But ice skating rinks are very similar. You go in and it just smells like an ice rink. It's lovely. They always have like a hot chocolate at the snack bar, and all your favorite songs are playing while you're skating around. And yes, there are blades on your feet, so there are a lot of dangers. And yes, at both kinds of rinks, you can indeed fall and get bruised really badly. I've crashed into several people myself. But it's a great opportunity to chat with your friends while racing them around and chasing each other about. And yeah, there's also golf courses and mini golf courses. I There actually are some internet videos of women who work on golf carts at golf courses. And I think it's really interesting how these women's job is to like socialize with the old white men that are at these golf courses and pour them drinks and ask them how their day is going and then get tipped really well in cash. And I just think that's fascinating.
That is pretty
They don't,
fascinating.
yeah, they don't do that at mini golf courses though.
No, they do not. Yeah, kind of. It reminds me almost of geisha. Your companion that and it's about conversation, and it's about like you said, pouring drinks and saying, "How's your day?" and looks like you're doing well. I haven't seen those videos. I bet they're interesting.
Yeah, getting like a close-up look on what that's like, because goodness knows I will never step foot onto a golf course myself if I can help it. But mini golf courses are another story because they're for the family in general, and they're often themed to be fantasy or castle-y and all that. And I'm actually working this summer on a immersive Dungeons and Dragons themed mini golf experience at the local escape room, and they are going to install a bar for drinks and have some private themed rooms for reservation. They're going to have like one half of the golf course be a quest themed, and the other half is going to be a rift where it's like all these portals opened up and random golf related stuff has flown in, and it's called Parcadia to emphasize the pun of par as in golf and then
Oh,
Arcadia
I get
as in
it. I get it.
fantasy.
Okay.
Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ha ha
And I think
ha.
there's a lot of fun stuff that you can do with mini golf. There have been a lot of places that have done glow in the dark mini golf, which is interesting. And I guess it's safer because the lights are out, but there's no sharp things around. But there's a lot that you can do with this idea, apparently. And the last thing on my list is bowling, which nowadays I don't really like it anymore. I never really did like bowling. It's really loud. There's too many people sometimes. The bowling balls feel weird. And then you have to rent shoes. I mean, I guess you have to rent shoes at all of these places. But as a kid, I didn't understand why I had to rent shoes for bowling. They never really explained it super well to me, so but I don't know, skates I understand. Anyway, yeah, not my favorite, but bowling definitely another very socially active activity for sure.
And what's interesting is, I think in in business or like during a job or something like that, they will often say, "Hey, we're going to go bowling to have a little recreation, right? Or we're going to go golfing." And I mean, that old trope that so much business is done on the golf course, or let's go and we'll go bowling and we'll have a little like in company competition, and sometimes that gets a little bit intense, and you have to think about, oh, do I want to sign up for bowling, because how am I going to be not a good employee if I don't get at least a few strikes? So I know, pretty crazy, pretty crazy.
Oh yeah, and one more thing is also playing pool at the bar too. How could I
Oh
forget about that?
yeah.
Yeah. There's also always like socializing with pool. I think my classmates literally just invited everybody to pool tomorrow, so I guess that might be in my fitness cards soon.
Sounds like it. Or darts.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I want to say like 3 years ago, something like that, my partner and I got on this darts kick, and she got me a dartboard, and we started to like practice kind of how could we get better at throwing these darts. And we did actually get better at throwing the darts. Reminds me of that classic episode in Ted Lasso. You remember the episode where
Yeah.
it's two. I mean, Ted Lasso isn't posturing, right? But Rebecca's husband, I can't remember his name, but he's coming in and starting to badmouth her and starting to badmouth Ted's team. And so the guys have this like mini competition where they throw darts at a dartboard, and Ted has set this up as a bet, and he has essentially, Ted has set this up to be kind of like, right, this is an all or nothing thing. Like the team, if you win, you can take do whatever you want with the team, but if I win, you leave Rebecca alone and you leave the team alone. And this dartboard becomes an arena for something much, much bigger. And the stakes of that simple dart game take over that moment. It's actually it's one of the best kind of moments of a sporting event in all of television. And it's just this little dart game. It was really wild. So, some final thoughts. All right, to wrap up, I want to share sort of iconic speech, sports speech from the movie Any Given Sunday. So this is Al Pacino. I'm not going to try and do an Al Pacino impression. He plays Coach Tony D'Amato, or Tony D, in this movie, and this is what he's gone through, like all this stuff in this movie, and the team has gone through this football, and he's American football for our international listeners, and he's gone through like all this self growth and stuff, and the team has gone through all these trials and tribulations. And so I'll give the quote, and then I'll talk about why I think this is meaningful. And so Coach Tony D says, when you get old in life, things get taken from you. That's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out that life is just a game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, one half step too late or too early, you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow or too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. So this is known as the game of inches monologue. And I really love the idea of what do we learn about life from sports? What do we learn about pushing ourselves? What do we learn about winning and losing? About even if we do our best, we can still not win, right? Or when we don't do our best, we can still win. It's just it's there are connections between these games that we play on the field or these simulated games and life lessons. This is another trope. What does being in sports teach you? It teaches you to be a gracious loser and a gracious winner. It teaches you to be part of a team. It teaches you to push yourself for a common goal. And like, there are all these things, and they're all true. I mean, they are. But also, what is learned from putting together physical labor or effort and play? How do we learn about pretending and also pushing our bodies and what we are capable of? There are all kinds of different things, I think, that we can apply to life when we think about our bodies in space, what they're capable of, and what objectives we are kind of going after. And whether, honestly, Avery, whether our bodies are capable of doing what we are asking them to do. I am never, ever going to be able to dunk a basketball. Ever. Right? But I might be able to get a hole in one on the mini golf course. It's all about what effort matches your body's capacity. So those were my final thoughts.
Wow, really well said. This whole chat has reminded me about my dad and his obsession with meditation growing up. He would always push my siblings and I to go to the meditation hall with him, which was just a quiet house where somebody transformed it into a Buddhist altar with just a giant room for meditation. And there were always these pillows that my brother and I would just throw around because we did not respect the art of meditation, nor did we have the patience or understanding of why these Buddhist people were trying to sit still for so long. And it kind of, it, if we consider my dad's meditative passion as the fitness, I think my siblings and I would counter that with the sport of throwing pillows to be more fun, specifically meditation pillows. I mean, they came in like round sizes, they came in square sizes. They were so cool. Why don't we play with those instead? But as I grow older, I definitely realize the importance of meditation and even how when you watch people participate in sports, before they go to do their big thing, like before they start the race or before they dive off the board, they have like this moment where they close their eyes and like tell themselves something right before, and or they close their eyes and they go to a certain space in themselves that allows them to do their best or commit their best. And I think meditation is itself a part of fitness, and if we were to ever turn it into a sport, my dad would definitely want to do that. But I think the fitness of meditation is something that has been really important to my family and that I hope to continue to prioritize in my life because it's not the most traditional fitness, but it does relate to how well it keeps your inner parts in health and wellness. That is all I have for this episode, Drew. I'd like to thank you again for a lovely chat as always.
Absolutely. Thank you, Avery. Thank you, listeners, and we will be back next month.
This has been Powered by Play with Avery and Drew. If you've been enjoying this podcast, you can support us online at Ko-fi. That is ko-fi.com/poweredbyplay. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.